Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF the podcast. This is episode 90 called Marilyn. So guys, I don't even know where to start with my friend Marilyn B Gomez because she is just the best. She's one of the coolest people ever. She's so giving. She's so friendly. She's such a shoulder to lean on for everybody in this community. And today she's going to tell us about her journey, which lasted from 2009 to 2015. We're going to talk about so many things, including how much the holidays suck while you're TTC, the guilt that she experienced about genetic testing and whether genetic testing is playing God, how therapy and visualization exercises helped her and how she dug herself out of a hole when she was really down in the muck, how she and her husband grieved differently and how that affected their marriage and drove them apart. And then we're going to talk about how she finally did become pregnant with her daughter, Mila, but the anxiety that you have when you become pregnant after infertility. So all these things, it's Marilyn Gomez. Check out her stuff at Infertility. She's got really cool swag for people that are going through this. She's got earrings and hats and t-shirts and mask chains and super cute stuff. So Marilyn, I love you, girl. Without further ado, this is Marilyn's infertility story. Marilyn, I'm so happy to talk to you today. There's a lot going on in the world and we don't need to get into all that, but I feel like I've really come to love you in this community and just, you've been really involved with the rally and just, we've been chatting a lot and I just you've become one of those people that I feel like I really can turn to and count on and who I love talking to. So I'm so happy to talk to you again today because we did this before and I fucking lost the episode. So here we are again. But anyway,
Thank you for bringing me back. You're the best. And I love this community so much. This is now my mission.
I know it is. Mission. Same. Yeah. And you got Infertile Teas, which we'll plug right out of the gate. I have your Le Hope t-shirt, which I love with the rainbow on it.
Thank you.
Do you know that I think I told you this. I had a pact with myself that I wasn't going to buy any new clothing for the whole 2020. And that's the only thing I've bought is your shirt.
Yeah. That makes me feel so special, but it's such a cute shirt.
But it is so cute. And it's I'm like, well, that's not really, it's supporting my friend's, business. Yeah. It's not really buying clothes. I did some weird loophole in my mind. So
yeah.
But I'm happy to buy it. I wear it with pride.
Yes.
And I do want to talk about how you got into that whole thing, designing things and all that. But let's start at the beginning with your story, because I know you've had a long infertility journey as well. So were you the kind of person that always wanted to have kids? Did you think about that growing up? And was that always part of your life plan?
Allie, I think now that I'm on the other side and I self-reflect, I feel like a lot of it was influenced by my parents. But yes, I always wanted children. I always wanted a big family. I came from a family of 4 and my parents, my mom and dad have massive families. They come from South America. I mean, my dad is one of 12 and my mom is one of 14. And so every Christmas we would fly to South America and spend the holidays. And I just loved being around my relatives and lots of cousins. And so from that moment, I mean, as young as I could remember, I just always had this vision of building a big family. And even growing up, my dad would say, well, one day when you have kids, you want to make sure. And so I felt like I was conditioned, I didn't have an option, right? That was my natural transition as a woman, I guess. Because that's how they raised me.
What were those family events when you guys would all get together? I'm picturing tons of dancing because you dance a lot on Instagram.
Yes, I do.
Tons of dancing, tons therapy, of fun, right?
Lots of fun, lots of alcohol, lots of food. I've never been to Colombia, which is where my parents are from. It is a country that has so much passion and hospitality. The food is delicious. The land is beautiful. And so we would go to my grandmother's house and just really enjoy being together. And it was such a beautiful time period in my life. And so I always envisioned okay, when I get older and I have my own children, this is something this is the same feeling I want to captivate for my family.
Okay. So flashing forward a bit, what happened when you met your husband?
So I met my husband in 2002 in college, and I learned that he was also Colombian, which for me, I was like, oh, this is good.
Where were you guys?
We were in Orlando, Florida. We met at the University of Central Florida, and then we started dating, and he is one of 6. And so I really started painting that future like, okay, so he has a big family than the average American family.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm on the right path.
Right.
And we dated for a while before we decided to get married, because I was one of those 20-somethings that really wanted to focus on building out her career before I settled down, because I wanted the big family.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah. So we get married in 2009. And I've said this a lot lately, like we were having unprotected sex. And so when we got married, we just went to the OB immediately. We got married in July of 2009. And so that September, I was in the office of the OB, like telling her that I wanted her help to get pregnant. And of course, when she asked, like, have you been trying for a year? I told her yes, because how are they going to know?
Yes. I remember you saying that to me before when we talked. And I was like, yes, because I think that putting that out there for people who are listening is like a good mess. Not like you should lie, ladies, but I feel like so many people are like told to wait for a year. And it's like, fuck that. Like, why? What's that arbitrary number?
Especially if we're basically racing against our own body, because once you hit your mid-30s, you're in the yellow to red zone with your egg quality, like, and your egg reserve, right? And so I was 27. And so she put me on Clomid. I mean, she didn't do any blood work or anything like that. She said, okay, well, let's put you on Clomid. And at that time, we didn't have this incredible community where we could lean in and ask questions or anything like that. No one was talking about it. I mean, literally, you cannot tell if a woman has any type of infertility. Like you literally can't tell. So, and I didn't know it was a thing. And so I was on 6 rounds of Clomid, and every month she kept upping my dosage. And I just went along with it because I hadn't defined myself as infertile. It was just, okay, well, this is the year that I had lied about. So the Clomid is just going to give me an extra boost. And so eventually on my last round of Clomid, my husband was like, what the fuck? Like, we've been at it for 6 months and you're on Clomid. This is supposed to like boost everything. And I'm like, okay, well, let's find a reproductive endocrinologist.
What was the Clomid? Did you have Clomid crazies, or like what was the effect on you?
Girl, it was so bad. I was crazy. And I'm already a really I'm a high functioning, anxious person. And so it was like that times 10 plus hot flashes. And I didn't realize that little by little it was affecting my husband, because he was just tolerating me, and as I was with the Clomid, but it starts to take a toll, like right from the very beginning, because you have this goal in mind and it's not happening, and then you have this invisible checklist, like, okay, well, now we got to get back to the drawing board, and we have to go to the next bullet point. And so I found this RE, and of course,
how did you find the RE? Like, did you just Google?
Oh, this is funny. This is funny because I didn't even know the name of I didn't know what the title was for reproductive endocrinologist.
I didn't either.
I truly did not know. And I remember I got off an exit on the highway and I saw an office that said Reproductive Endocrinology Associates. And I pulled over and I Googled it. And I
flip
saw
phone or
on my girl, it was a razor.
No, 2009, right?
A razor, yeah.
Not that long ago.
It was a razor. It feels centuries ago.
Right?
And yeah, it said fertility specialist. And I'm like, okay, I think this is where I need to go. So I pulled in the parking lot. I walked in and I made an appointment, and I saw them, I think maybe like a couple weeks after. I went with my husband and we had a consultation with the doctor, kind of gave them like the rundown. Of course, I told them that I was trying for 2 years. I added a year because I needed that urgency. It was urgent. I mean, I was on a time clock by 30. I needed to have 3 children. I mean, it was whole like idea that I'd painted in my head. And so he got me in and they did some testing, and I don't really remember what he did, but he said, let's look inside your uterus and see what's going on. I think there were some shadows on an ultrasound that he did. He wanted to take a closer look at, and he found mild endometriosis and uterine polyps. And so he cleaned my uterus up, is what he said. And he provided it on a video. So I actually have the CD of that procedure, which is.
And he did it right then and there, like right away?
No, we didn't do it right away. Like,
oh, okay.
We had to go back is all I know. Can you imagine?
I'm like, wow, one-stop shop. Just go right in.
I so wish, but no, you have to, wait for the right time with your cycle and everything.
Right.
And
okay. Okay.
A month later we did that. And, this doctor gave me a lot of hope. I remember coming out of anesthesia. He was like, okay, you're young, you're healthy. We've got the problem out of the way. So if you guys want, you could do it right now. You'll get pregnant. And then he left the room and I'm like coming out of anesthesia. And so I was like, what? Okay. That is very confident. And so I'm like, okay, I believe my doctor. That was the issue. And so we kept trying for several months and nothing happened. But I thought again, okay, this was the original problem. This is why Clomid didn't work. So this is the actual year that they talk about of like trying for a year.
Right. Right.
So we're trying. And by this time, like, Allie, I think we're in mid 2012.
Okay.
And my husband gets a fantastic job opportunity in Salt Lake City, Utah. So we packed up our little condo and drove from Orlando, Florida to Salt Lake in November of 2012. And on the drive there, I'm like, okay, I'm going to find a reproductive endocrinologist because right when we get there, like I need to have an appointment.
Yeah, we're going again.
We're going again.
Yeah.
And so my first appointment was actually of January 2013 because it was the holiday season when we got there. And the doctor was like, okay, let's get you started on IUIs. This is the next step. If you guys have been trying for X amount of years, let's get you on some IUIs.
Okay.
And I had signed up for Instagram during that time. It was the thing. And I came across trying to conceive #TTC and I tapped on it and it was a woman talking about her adoption experience because she couldn't get pregnant. And then I'm like, okay, people are talking about it. This is interesting. And she looks kind of like me. Like you can't tell, that she's struggling. And so people were coming out and talking about infertility.
Right.
And so, but I still did not classify myself as infertile. I just thought that the polyps were the thing. And now that's out of the way. And so now I have to try a year out, So we do the IUIs with this doctor and we did 7 of them, Allie.
Yeah.
And so there's no explanation.
Tell me about like a couple of questions. Where were you getting your support from? Like where, you said Instagram was kind of just starting. Who were you talking to about all this stuff? And also second part would be like, what was going on with your relationship? Because I know obviously this is so hard on a partnership, no matter if you're married or, same sex, whatever, whatever you go through, it's tough. So tell me about your experience with that.
So those questions actually almost blend into one answer because my husband, even to this day, is extremely private. He's just very reserved already. He's an introvert. He's very private. And you're talking about your sex life. And so he was like, I don't feel comfortable telling anybody about it. And so I didn't talk to anyone. I mean, my parents knew that we were trying, but they didn't know the extent of what we were doing as far as like going on Clomid, now getting started on IUIs. They didn't know the logistics of that. And I had told my friends like, hey, we're trying to get pregnant, but not, hey, been trying for a couple years now. And of course, people always responded with their advice, like, oh, make sure he grabs you by the ankles to keep the sperm inside. Make sure you elevate your bum. Like it was all like the Cirque du Soleil in the bedroom, where it was like sex was no fun anymore. Like it's ridiculous. And so in my head, I'm like, okay, well, let's try these things. But it was very lonely. And, men and women cope with difficult situations very differently. We want to talk about it.
Yeah.
They don't. And then they turn their focus to doing other things. Right. And so talking together with my husband was hard. And I wanted to talk publicly about it because I know that that is what I needed and he did not. And I wanted to respect him. And so we were private, and that eventually started to chip away at our marriage, and it got really hard. And there was a little bit of resentment that started to build at that time when we were doing IUIs, because it was my body that was being invaded with all of these instruments and hormones and in timing and calendars. And all he needed to do was provide the sperm.
Right.
And so I started to resent that a little bit. I didn't feel like he was showing up for me the way I needed him to, but I also, in some sense, I had compassion for him because he felt like there was nothing else he could do. And then I started to create this idea in my head that I was prohibiting him from this role that men obtain in the world, right? I'm like, I cannot give him the role or title of father. Like, it's me because he checked out. Yes. And there was a level of guilt there. Like I already wasn't good enough. And then growing up in a religious home where, your scriptures teach us that you're supposed to multiply and replenish the earth. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, what did I do to get this punishment?
Yes, totally.
And now I can't be there for my husband the way that, his next role is supposed to flourish into. And so we did a shit ton of IUIs. And again, I just kept following my doctor's direction. I didn't know that I could come and ask questions, but I also didn't know what the hell to ask.
Right.
I just didn't know.
You're doing like IUI after IUI. And how did it feel when it was like, it's not working? It's not working. Because you weren't getting pregnant, right?
I wasn't getting pregnant and I was not taking a break. I'm like, okay, next one.
Yep.
I started to resent my body. Like, I'm a woman and I can't do that one simple function as a woman. And that is to carry a baby, to get pregnant.
Yeah.
I became obsessed with home pregnancy tests. I should have bought stock in, home pregnancy tests because I've spent thousands of dollars in these things.
Oh my God, seriously. Same. Yes.
Yeah. And then at the time in my career, I was working in a predominantly male industry. And one of my coworkers, he was like, hey, my wife is pregnant. And I was like, hey, congratulations. It's great. And he's like, we've been trying for a while. And then I was like, oh, tell me about that. And then he told me that they'd done several IVFs. I asked him what clinic did he go to? And he gave me the information of a new doctor. And so I kind of opened up to him a little bit, which was interesting because men don't typically do that. But I guess, it was just the right moment. And I needed to know, like, okay, I can go to another doctor or I can ask different questions. Cause he's like, did they check your vitamin levels? Like your vitamin D, did they check? And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know.
Right. You're like, that's a thing?
That's a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I went to I call him the IUI doctor because he did so many. I'm like, I went to the IUI, back to the IUI doctor, to my WTF appointment. And he's like, I asked him, I said, hey, what do you think about vitamin D? Does that affect infertility? And he would not even entertain any questions that I had. And that's when I knew, okay, if I'm paying this person X amount of money, like you better be able to entertain some questions for me. Right. And so I went to the doctor that my colleague and his wife went to, and I switched REs. So by this time, Allie, we are in late 2013. Oh my God. Yeah, it's a wild ride.
The money, the money that's spent too is like a whole nother conversation, right? Because it's like, why is it so expensive? And
it's so unfair. And can I tell you is that you can call your insurance company and talk to them, right? You can talk to them and talk to whoever does the billing at the office. How are you coding these IUIs? How are you coding these ultrasound visits? I later learned that they were coding like my lab work and ultrasound visits as under the infertility umbrella. And so it was eating into my maximum coverage. And so I later learned, because I had another clinic code it differently so that I still could use like the chunk of my infertility coverage for IVF.
Right.
So I get started. Yeah. I get started at this new clinic. Loved the dialogue with this woman. She said, hey, it sounds like you have unexplained infertility, which for me was like, okay, this day and age with all of the technology and all of the advancements and things that we've cured in the world, you're telling me that you cannot identify why I cannot get pregnant.
Right.
That is wild.
Did it feel crazy that you were finally labeled as being infertile though? Like, how did that feel?
You know, I did find comfort knowing, this is so weird, that it was something, even though the something was unknown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because now I could buckle up for the long haul, right? Because for me, someone that plans everything out, somebody that is very type A,
Mm-hmm.
I have to have a plan all the time. And not having the plan before and not knowing was very difficult to navigate. And
Right.
now that I knew, like, okay, this is unexplained infertility. These are the statistics for people that can get pregnant with unexplained infertility. This is the route we can take. I was like, okay, although it's a little murky, at least I know that there's a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like people were talking about it more and more on social media. And I was getting involved in this community. I was learning what to ask and how to support somebody else that was going through the same thing that I was experiencing while my marriage was deteriorating, because my husband and I were not nourishing our relationship because it was my body that had the problem. So I almost felt like I was cast aside. And so I submerged myself into this community because I had nobody else at home that would be there for me. And again, feeling guilty that it was taking so long for me to make my husband a dad. And you know, one of my really good girlfriends, I remember having coffee with her once. Sorry for pivoting real quick. But
No, that's okay.
She was like, Marilyn, your husband married you because he loves you, not because he wanted you to make him a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, it's not your job to do that. That's such a heavy burden to carry. And I was like, thank you. And, you know, after that conversation, I knew I needed to see a therapist.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to continue feeling guilty, but also resenting the relationship.
Right.
Yeah. So I got geared up. So this is happening like parallel. I'm getting ready to do therapy, and then I'm getting ready to do my first IVF, which, can I tell you, I thought that like IVF was so expensive because it guaranteed you a baby.
Yes. Okay. So I wanted to ask you about that. So yesterday we did a campaign for World Fertility Day that was like fertility confessions. And that was one of your confessions, was that, you know, you thought IVF guaranteed you a baby. So did I, Marilyn.
Yeah.
And I thought one of my confessions was, I thought IVF was for like a choice. Like I thought it was like people that were like, oh, I want to have more than one kid. I didn't realize it was like a medical procedure that people, you know, needed to have. I thought it was like an optional thing where it was like, oh, you want to have a litter of babies? Like,
yeah, Allie,
so
when you shared that, I had a girlfriend that used to think the same thing. Like, I want multiples, so I'm going to elect to do this procedure.
Completely.
Yeah, that's not the case.
Right. I know.
It's not the case. Yeah. And, you know, I thought like, okay, these are all the things that we do before we decide to buy a baby. And that's why IVF is so expensive. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, go to this vending machine and here we go. Here's where it all happens.
Completely.
And, you know, we go into IVF and, you know, to like sidebar for a second, back in that time, like this is now 2014, people that were talking about IVF were only sharing their success stories, not like, oh, I did X amount of IVFs. And it was just like, oh, I did an IVF and now I'm pregnant. And so it was like, there was no transparency, which, gosh, it's so hard to even talk about this. So I totally respect people's privacy, but there's a lot of misconception about what it actually is. Mm-hmm. So we do our first IVF and they retrieved 17 eggs, which 17 is my magic number, apparently. Mm-hmm. And it was a fresh transfer. So on day 5, we had 2 left. Mm-hmm. And so I transferred those 2 the same week of retrieval. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was it. My first beta was indicated that I was pregnant. My second beta, the number didn't move. And so the doctor was like, it's a chemical pregnancy. And it was the first time I'd ever even heard that term. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't understand, like, scientifically, like, okay, if you took my egg and you take the sperm and you inject the sperm and the egg. How can it be like chemical? Like, I just don't get it. For me, it was so real. Like I felt those embryos. Like, it was real to me. And so the word chemical almost makes it feel negated. Like those embryos were nothing. For me, they're my babies. And so it was a really hard pill to swallow. But again, I geared up for my next one. And my husband and I were like, okay, we're just getting started. Like unexplained infertility, like the next one has to work. And so after the first failed IVF, we were bummed, but we're like, okay, we got to do it again. We didn't take time to really take it all in. And when I shared that with my therapist, she's like, but Marilyn, you have to take it in or it's going to all crash at the same time. And in my head, I was like, but I know myself, like,
right.
And I wish I'd listened to her advice, and I get geared up for IVF number 2. And I started to fantasize about a Christmas announcement. Holidays start to become the measurement of your infertility. Like, oh, here's another Father's Day, Mother's Day, arms are still empty. Here's another Christmas.
Yeah. Halloween, even us, with all the Halloween, babies everything. In their pumpkin costumes. And it's so
Halloween.
hard.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, not another Christmas. Like I'm going to plan this transfer so that I can make a holiday announcement. Woohoo. Right. And so in September of 2014, I get geared up for my second IVF. 17 eggs are retrieved. 4 make it to day 5. We did not do PGS testing because I just wasn't ready to take that on. I didn't really understand, honestly, what that meant.
Hold that thought, guys. This episode is being sponsored in part by Thrive Cosmetics, an independent, woman-founded and owned beauty brand that specializes in high-performance makeup and skincare that's both vegan and cruelty-free. Now, we all know the holidays provide the perfect excuse to get a little more glammed up than usual. And Thrive Cosmetics is a new beauty brand I've discovered and really fallen in love with. And right now, they have some amazing discounted sets that are perfect for gifting. Plus, for every product you buy, they donate to help a woman thrive. Now, talk about holiday cheer. Also, you guys know I love me a female-founded and owned company, and Thrive takes it one step further. Their mission is called Bigger Than Beauty, which means that for every purchase, they donate much-needed products and funds to nonprofit partners nationwide who are helping women face significant challenges to thrive again. All right, now let's talk about some of their high-performance products. Thrive Cosmetics products are made with skin-loving ingredients, and they're formulated without parabens, sulfates, and phthalates. And a lot of the sets right now include a free tube of Thrive Cosmetics best-selling Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara, which is one of my faves. This is the mascara you may have heard about that is sold every 5 seconds. It's flake-free, smudge-free, and clump-free, and it's got more than 7,000 5-star reviews, and it also won Glamour's Best Clean Beauty Product of 2020 award for the best mascara. I was wearing it the other day, and my daughter Ever said, "Mom, are you wearing fake lashes?" And I wasn't. I was just wearing their Lash Extensions mascara. So here's the thing. You can start thriving and help women in need today by going to thrivecosmetics.com/infertileaf for 15% off your first purchase. That's Thrive, CAUSE, medics.com/infertileaf for 15% off. Thanks so much, Thrive. Yeah, that was another one of your confessions, if you don't mind me bringing that up again. Like, what were you thinking it was?
You know, I think when I had started talking about IVF with my family, see, I was brought up in a conservative household, like I mentioned earlier. They were really skeptical, and they're like, you just need to put it in God's hands. Like, God is in control. And I'm like, but he's not in control here. Like, my body's just not doing it. And they're like, it's playing God. And so I had that guilt bubble up inside of me of, as a child in a religious household of like questioning God. And so it felt wrong. And even going to a reproductive endocrinologist, even though it was time to do that, I felt there was a level of guilt, like, oh, this is my punishment for things that I did wrong, growing up, and now I'm questioning God by having a man, like a physical human, try to get me pregnant instead of like being faithful. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was something I wrestled with. Plus, the doctor didn't do a good job explaining what PGS testing was. She literally handed me a pamphlet, and I'm like, a pamphlet, and in the pamphlet was like, talk to a counselor. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird. Yeah.
Right.
And so we just chucked the pamphlet aside, and that week of retrieval, we had 4 embryos. And so we froze 2 embryos and we transferred 2 embryos.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a positive beta, and I keep saying positive beta. I don't remember my numbers. This was like centuries ago, it feels like. But
yeah. You know what's funny is sorry to interrupt, but I never got my numbers. Like now it's such a thing as like beta 1, beta 2, beta 3. Like I'm not even kidding. When I got, after my, round of IVF that resulted in Sunny, they called me and they're like, you're pregnant. And there was no number attached. I was like, great. And they're like, call us when you deliver. And I was like, I'm not kidding you.
Did you know like that the numbers was a thing?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I mean, I remember like when I had miscarriages before that they had said your numbers are dropping, but I'd like never thought to ask. I didn't even know about betas, and I'm not even kidding you, until like 2 years ago. And my son is almost 5.
Interesting?
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting.
I know.
I think we overanalyze betas too. So
I think sometimes it's funny because I've talking to somebody else about this recently where it's like, you wonder, do we know too much now? Like, because it makes it, you do analyze every little thing. And if a number's low or your progesterone drops or, it's like, it's almost like ignorance is bliss to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Once you're pregnant, because you're just like, okay, I'm pregnant. But if you're monitoring everything every day and, I get it. I understand why people do that. And I love that we have all this knowledge now, but sometimes it's like, with looking at all these numbers, I think can make people nervous.
That is such a good point. That is so interesting. And you're right. And even egg quality, which a lot of people don't know, is that every lab measures egg quality and labels the egg or grades the eggs differently. There is not a national standard of egg grading. Yeah. And people are like, oh, mine was a 2B HD TV. And I'm like, that doesn't matter.
649er illegal.
I'm like, that doesn't matter because you go right up the road to the other clinic and their embryologist is going to grade your egg much differently.
Totally. So, I didn't know that either. That's
that does not matter. And you're right. We may know a little too much.
Yeah. I mean, obviously like knowledge is power and all that stuff, and advocate for yourselves and learn as much as you can. But, just when it's like, when you're looking at stuff every single day and comparing to others, like I think sometimes that gets a little tricky.
Right. And where you're going to put your energy to, for sure.
Mm-hmm. But I get it. Yeah. I totally get it. No judgment for people that are, monitoring closely.
No, I agree. I'm one of those. Give me everything. I want to know all. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my second beta rose a little bit. Okay. And then they're like, oh, you're going to miscarry. And I was like, but it rose. Can it how quick does this develop? Like, I just didn't understand. And then my third beta, it just slightly rose. And the doctor's like, yeah, you're going to miscarry. So stop all your meds. And I thought, well, are you sure? Like, I just was so, even to this day, I'm like, I'm still so unsure. Like, was that the right call? Like, should I have had an ultrasound? But I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And, again, like this on Christmas Day, actually, I remember I was watching Polar Express and I get the call and they're like, yeah, your numbers are dropping. So you're miscarrying. If you feel crampiness or anything that is hurting, like you need to go to the ER. And so that news just crushed me. I just remember crumbling and the pain that I experienced in that moment, I was like, this is infertility.
Yes.
And I remember
I just got the chills.
Feeling like it was yesterday, like my husband holding me and I was like, this hurts so bad. Like, how can I move on? Mm-hmm. How can I live another day with this pain? This is so painful. Mm-hmm. And I continued with therapy and laid it all at the feet of my therapist, who guided me to a place and a mindset to help me find joy in the present day. And, the word hope, I started to despise the word hope. Eventually for me meant that, I hope that tomorrow is better than today. So today cannot be as great as tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Until I have a baby in my arms, like I can hope. And so every day I was almost like waking up and rushing through the day so I can go to bed and get closer to my goal. And which was, having a baby and having a big family.
Right.
And it wasn't happening. And so my therapist was like, you need to stop and smell the roses. Let's do some exercises for you to get back to present. And so I'm a very visual. So we did a lot of visualization exercises. And I started to dig myself out of this hole that I put myself in again.
So did that stuff help you with the therapist?
Allie, it helped me so much. And if I could get back in a time machine, I would make my husband go to therapy with me, because while I was improving, he was dealing with pain and grief his own way. Mm-hmm. And so it eventually drove us a little apart, where I was doing so much better and he was still in so much pain, and he wouldn't talk to me about it. Mm-hmm. And I had a TTC sister, trying to conceive sister, find me on Instagram. And she's like, hey, listen, there's a clinic out of state right by you. It's in Colorado. I think you need to check it out. My girlfriend that's in her mid 40s got pregnant at this clinic with horrible eggs. You have unexplained infertility, as you've shared. If you're going to do this again, just go to the clinic. Just talk to the doctor.
So this person, had you talked to this person before on Instagram?
I had.
Okay, so you made a friend in the community. Are you still friends with this person?
I am. I'm still friends with her.
Awesome.
And she was almost like my mentor. I'm like her little sister in this regard, right? In this community. And she's been on the other side for a while, but her and I cycled at the same time. We did IVF 1 and 2 at the same time, coincidentally, and she got pregnant and I didn't. And so now, presently, when I see her kids on Instagram, I'm like, oh, my kids would be the same age, which is a little off sometimes. I'm like, oh gosh, that's really strange to see. But she's been a good mentor.
I think that's common though, when you see, people that, again, like you're cycling at the same time or pregnant at the same time, and they, have a healthy pregnancy and you don't, then you see their kid like, oh, my kid would have been starting first grade, or second grade. A lot of people do that. It's really hard, but it's also kind of a coping, it makes it real. It almost validates. Exactly. I'm grieving because this happened. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because you can't see what wasn't essentially
right
there and flourished.
Yeah. I think that's sometimes one of the hardest parts about this whole thing is the grief of what could have been. And that's not a tangible thing. So sometimes people that haven't gone through it don't understand that bit of it. It's like the loss of a hope, the loss of your dream, the loss of the dream.
Yeah. The dream that you wrote. Right. And so my therapist helped me decide. She's like, but you can rewrite a new one.
Yeah.
You choose to rewrite a new one. And it sounds easy, but it's very hard. You literally have to choose to do that every single day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in March 2015, I flew to Colorado for a one-day workup at this new clinic, and they did so much testing on my body. And I realized that the other clinics I had gone to were template matching and basically just giving me the same blanket protocol that everybody got. And this new clinic was going to cater the protocol based on my body. And so they were like, we're not going to take the 2 frozen embryos from your last IVF. You're going to leave them there, because we want to control your egg quality from the very beginning with supplements. So they had me on acai berry supplements for several weeks leading up to retrieval. And I had the magic number again, 17 retrieved. Mm-hmm. We did PGS testing. They were like, if you're going to be a patient here, we're going to do PGS testing because that increases the probability of pregnancy and lowering the chances of miscarriage. And by that time, we'd invested so much money into all of this. And we had taken out a small loan because we were like, okay, this is going to be the last shot. Let's go to this clinic. Let's take out a loan and let's do everything they say, like PGS testing, all kinds of tests. Let's just do it all. Right. If it doesn't work, I was ready to live child-free. I had already started to paint this new life in my head of what our plan B was.
Right. Because how long had it been at this point, Marilyn? Like all in, how many years?
Oh, I mean, 2009 to 2015.
Yeah. Okay. It's a long damn time.
A long time. Yeah. And that's what we did. We PGS tested 7 embryos and two came back normal. Mm-hmm. And my retrieval was during the summer, and the doctors wanted my body to get back to normal, like 0 hormone medicine in my system to get my body to its normal state to get ready for transfer, which was September of 2015. And so we flew back to Colorado, September of 2015, where we transferred 2 genetically normal embryos. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. I woke up feeling nothing. I was like, okay, this is my next bullet point. This is the last thing I'm going to check off my list. I had just adopted and rescued a dog. Mm-hmm. I was ready. I'm like, he's here with me. Like, and he came with me to my embryo transfer. We brought him with us.
Yeah. Oh.
And it worked. Like I got pregnant and my ultrasound showed that 1 took. And I didn't really believe that it worked.
Mm-hmm. So wait, this was what month? 2015?
This was September of 2015.
Okay. So we were pregnant at the same time.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known you back then. I did my transfer in April. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I got to announce my Christmas pregnancy, which to me, even announcing it felt really weird. Like I was jinxing myself. Like, and I truly, it's hard. And I think sometimes it's hard to talk about in this community, like whether you had a good pregnancy or a bad pregnancy, because people are trying so hard to get pregnant.
Right.
But my pregnancy was ridden with a lot of anxiety.
Totally. Yeah.
And I just, thought it was not real and not going to happen. And so I delivered my beautiful girl in June of 2016. And her name is Mila. And she's an incredible little human. And, I still had this vision of wanting to expand my family. And so I sat on those 2 embryos that were frozen for several years, looking at the $700 storage bill every year. I'm like, oh, they're still there.
Yeah.
And so last year I was like, okay, I'm in my late 30s. I'm turning 40 soon. I just want to get this over with. I'm like, I don't want to have this hanging over my head anymore. And if they work, great. If not, then I have to close this chapter. So we actually moved to Charlotte during this time. And so we're in North Carolina. I flew by myself to transfer those 2 frozen embryos last year, October of 2019. Okay. And I didn't want my husband to come or my daughter. It was for me, like it was a spiritual experience for me of like going to pick up my kids.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so one of my very good friends took really good care of me. She picked me up. She took me to the clinic. She was in the room with me during transfer. It was a beautiful spiritual experience. And, 10 days later, I would learn that it didn't take. And I took, which was crazy because I tested early and I got a positive pregnancy test. So it must have been a chemical. Yeah, I got a positive test. The line got darker and then the levels went down to 10. My beta was a 10, which is a joke. The doctor was like, my nurse was like, continue with your meds. You're pregnant. I'm like, listen, I'm not pregnant. I've been in this game for a very long time. This is a joke. Like I was so upset. Yeah. And I mean, I stopped my meds immediately against their recommendation and, got my period, what was supposed to come. Yeah. And I grieved. I allowed myself to grieve for like 24 hours. And then I said, okay, it's time to close this chapter and start painting and creating a life where my new dream is 1 child, right? Like I have this beautiful miracle. Now I'm going to make this normal. This is going to be normal in this society that always says, hey, we're going to give your kid a sibling, Right. And so that's where we are. And, my husband still wants more children, Allie. Like he talks about it all the time. And it's, something we talk about often. And I've decided that for my mental health, for me to be level-headed and good and show up the way I'm supposed to, like I have to really just close that door.
Yeah, I think that makes sense for sure. I would love to ask you a little bit more about the embryos. So I hope this doesn't like open up anything for you.
It doesn't.
But I think it's interesting when people do have, more embryos that are on ice, for lack of a better term, in storage. And I think there's a lot of complicated feelings that go on with that. Like, what are you going to do with these embryos? Do you want to keep paying to keep them frozen, even if you're not going to use them? Do you donate them? Do you let the rent expire? I think and that's something I don't think people talk about enough. So I'd love to hear obviously you did what you did, but was it a hard decision? Did you ever think that I guess what I'm trying to say is, what was your thought process leading into that decision of going to transfer your final 2 embryos?
Yeah. For a while, I thought my husband and I were not going to make it. Because infertility was just so hard for us. And I thought, okay, if something were to happen, like if him and I split up, what do I do with these embryos? Because he would have to like sign off or present himself in some way.
Right.
Do I have the guts to discard something I worked so hard for that are like, for me, they're babies. They are babies. And do I have the heart to discard this? Do I have the heart to donate them? No. So I was like ready to pay forever. For them to be there. And, eventually, like if my daughter was struggling to conceive, which I've heard stories of, people passing their embryos on to their children or relatives, would that be something I was open to? But I really stopped myself from diving into so many hypotheticals because you could really drive yourself crazy. And so the mindset that I had was like, okay, like make a choice and stick to it. And so for me, it was just a matter of timing of when it was right for me to go and transfer them, because $700 for that many years, like it basically paid for another FET.
Right. Yeah.
And so for me, it was a no-brainer. I was ready to give them a shot, but I know people, Allie, that have lots. I mean, we're talking a dozen on ice.
Right. And I think that it's
conflicted.
Yeah. And I think people really do struggle with that. That's why I wanted to just ask your opinion about it a little bit more. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I'm just curious. Like, I don't know what I would do.
I know.
I don't know what I would do.
I think I'm kind of glad that I don't have to choose that.
Right.
Or make a choice that difficult, because that is just another layer in this fucked up situation.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason you probably did make that choice, not to put words in, is like, at least then that door is closed and you don't have to worry or wonder or what if, or, it was like, I'm going to try it. And then there's no more of that if it doesn't take,
Exactly.
Wow. God, there's so many fucking little complicated bits to all of these stories, isn't there? It's like,
there's so
you never
much.
Think about that thing being like, did you ever think that would even be a part of your life? Like having to make that choice?
No.
It's crazy.
Oh, are you kidding? Like Hollywood shows us how easy it is to get pregnant and have a baby.
Yeah, at 55.
Yeah, exactly. I know, exactly.
Totally. Oh my God. Well, let's talk about what you're doing now, because, like I said, you're such a huge, bright and brilliant voice in this community, and you support so many people. And I think a lot of people, including myself, really like look to you as like a source of comfort and just, like a friendly face. So tell me about your role and like what you're doing with Infertile Teas and what else do you have going on?
Thank you.
And your podcast too.
I really honestly am very passionate about 3 pillars in this community, but also it could translate into anything that you're going through in your life that's very difficult. And that's a self-advocacy, advocating for yourself, knowing your body, asking questions, demanding answers from your physicians, finding your tribe, leaning into your community, because when you find other people that know and have been through the thick of it and are going through the thick of it, that are they get you, they know how you're feeling, they get you. And so leaning into the community that understands you is so powerful, and healing and finding a way to heal while you're experiencing it. And so, Infertile Teas to me came when I was a month before I had my last embryo transfer last year. I was searching for something cute to wear for transfer day, and I didn't like anything. Everything was so corny. And I'm, a super like classic type of dresser. Like I like my basic pieces and something that is, I could wear every day. And so I'm like, hey, I know how to do graphic design. I'll just design my own. And then it just kind of flourished from there. And I thought, I feel it's so necessary to empower women to have a voice and to speak up for themselves, but also for the women that are afraid to speak up, to be the voice for those women as well, so that they know that they're not alone. Women that have private profiles on Instagram that are keeping up in the community because they are going through the thick of it. And so for me, like designing t-shirts where they feel seen and heard and being part of this community that is so hard to be a part of, right? But I've met some of my greatest friends here, and showing up for them with using my voice has really healed a lot of my wounds, and it goes through cycles, right? And I feel like a big sister in this community, and I am a lifer here, and being part of Fertility Rally has been so healing for me in ways that I didn't know that I needed.
That's good.
Granted, it doesn't feel the same as going through the thick of it, but
right.
For me, it's how do I walk through triggers as they arrive? And I know you get them too, as they come up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I wasn't even in this community until I was, out on the other side, but I feel the same way. And not just because it's our membership, but I feel like with the support groups and stuff with the rally, I feel so much better. It's just like therapy, no matter what you're going through. And it just feels so good to have this community of badasses coming together, so
there's so much power. There's so much power in healing and community.
Thank you so much, guys, for listening to my conversation with Marilyn. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are feeling inspired, maybe a little more hopeful. If you want to reach out to her, she's on Instagram at Marilyn B Gomez. You can always reach out to me too at Infertile AF Stories. I also wanted to remind you guys, if you have a minute, to please go and rate and review the podcast on Apple or wherever you listen to it. It really helps spread the word. And finally, please check out Fertility Rally, which is the business that I co-founded with Blair from Fab Fertility. It's a place that offers community, content, curated events. We are so happy that it exists. We have almost 300 members, and we would love to have more. So come and check us out at Fertility Rally. We are a small business, so word of mouth really helps out. So if you know anybody who can use the extra support, send them our way. All right, thanks. Have a great night, day, whenever you're listening to this, and I will talk to you guys next time.